History That Doesn't Suck is supported by Bob's Discount Furniture. My best friend from college is a Thomas Jefferson nerd, whereas I'm a Hamiltonian. One year, he sent me an Alexander Hamilton bobblehead with a note reading, "To my favorite monarchist." It's a favorite small gift sitting on my office desk. I like thoughtful notes, and this holiday, I'm thinking big. Like, why not go for the desk instead of the thing on the desk? At Bob's Discount Furniture, you can afford to go big. I mean, if my wife and kids listened to the podcast, which they don't, I'd recommend that my home office would be complete with Bob's Empire Cognac leather power recliner. And I'm thinking about grabbing a sploosh chair for the kids. They're soft, fun, and totally giftable. Go big or small, as Bob's also has great home decor items too, and even pet furniture. It's the season for big moments, not big stress. So skip the chaos, skip the haggling, shop haggle and hassle-free when you holiday the Bob's way.
I'm Brett Podolsky, co-founder of The Farmer's Dog. We make fresh, real food for dogs. It sounds so simple, and it is. But for decades, pet food companies have spent billions of dollars advertising that ultra-processed pellets are what we should be feeding our dogs every single day. My experience with my own dog, Jada, made me realize that there was another way. For years, Jada had constant issues. Can I talk about poops on the radio? I tried everything until a veterinarian recommended I feed her fresh food. It was a complete turnaround. That's why we started The Farmer's Dog, so every dog could experience the benefits of a truly healthy diet. It's not fancy. It's just fresh, whole food. Delivered right to your door, pre-portioned for your dog's unique needs. It's better for them and easier for you.
Get 50% off your first box at thefarmersdog.com/trial50. That's thefarmersdog.com/trial50.
Hello, my friends. It's Professor Greg Jackson. Now you can see the live tour by land and by sea because we're planning a 4-night VIP cruise aboard the beautiful Celebrity Reflection. From May 18th to the 22nd, we'll sail from Fort Lauderdale to Key West and the Bahamas. While on board, I'll not only give a special private performance of my live show, The Unlikely Union, we'll also have a night of fun history trivia, a poolside party, nightly group dining together, excursions, and the ultimate book club meeting. Because, if you don't know, I've been working on a book for the past 2 years, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate its publication this spring than with my family, friends, and the best history fans. So go to htdspodcast.com and click on live shows for more information, or click the link in the show notes. Hope to see you on the road, or at sea. It's about 7 in the morning, Sunday, December 7th, 1941. We're among the Pacific's Hawaiian Islands, near the northern tip of Oahu, where 2 young Army privates, 19-year-old Joseph Lockard and 21-year-old George Elliott, are training with some new technology, something called radio detection and ranging, or radar. It's a brilliant new system, largely the work of Britain's Sir Robert Watson Watt, that can track aircraft from over 100 miles away by bouncing radio waves off of them. Every morning, from 4 to 7 a.m., Army Signal Corpsmen on Oahu practice at 5 mobile radar stations. The other 4 stations have signed off for the day. But given that their ride back to base is yet to arrive, George, who's a brand new plotter, wants to get in all the training he can. Well, Joe, who's the radar operator, is happy to oblige. The 2 remain at the camp-like portable Opana radar station, working with their mobile SCR-270 radar installation. It's now 7:02 a.m. Joe and George are getting a large return, indicating something just over 130 miles north of Oahu. Something massive. That's weird, especially for a sleepy Sunday morning. And it's moving toward them fast. Okay, better call this in. Rushing to their field telephone, the young signal corpsmen place a call to Fort Shafter, down on the other side of the island at 7:20 a.m. The operator soon calls back, connecting them to fighter pilot and current watch officer, Lieutenant Kerman A. Tyler. Immediately, Joe starts explaining what he and George are seeing, that something large is approaching Oahu from the north. But Kermit, who's new to radar as well, is actually relieved to hear it. See, the young lieutenant heard continuous ad-free music on his car radio yesterday, and a friend told him that KGMB does this when planes are flying in from the mainland, so the pilots can use the broadcast and find their way to Hawaii with greater ease. Perfectly logical. He has no doubt whatsoever that all the radar is picking up is this large group of B-17s, or Flying Fortresses, as they're also known, due in from California this morning. Kermit reassures Joe. He says 4 words that will forever be seared into the young private's memory. Don't worry about it. Joe rejoins George. Together, they watch the blip on their oscilloscope indicate that whatever this thing, this group is, it's closing in. By 7:30, it's only 45 miles out. It's now approaching 7:50 a.m. Swinging westward around most of Oahu, a monoplane carrier attack bomber, a Nakajima B-5N2, cuts through Hawaii's blue skies. Seated in the middle of this 3-man aircraft is the 39-year-old Japanese mission commander, Lieutenant Commander Fuchida Mitsuo. Yes, we caught a glimpse of this flight in our last episode, and as we know, Fuchida is wearing a white scarf around his flight suit helmet, a hachimaki, gifted to Fuchida by the senior maintenance officer of the aircraft carrier, Akagi. It is, as he told the lieutenant commander, the maintenance crew's gesture of support. Quote, all of the maintenance crew would like to go along. Since we can't, we want you to take this hachimaki as a symbol that we are with you in spirit. Close quote. As his aircraft approaches Lehi Lehi Point, Fuchida peers through his binoculars at Oahu's southern shore. And that's when he sees it. A natural inlet, or natural lagoon, rather, whose salty waters form a series of bays with an even smaller isle in its middle. This natural lagoon is Pearl Harbor, and that small isle, known as Ford Island, is the location of the U.S. Naval Air Station. The B-5N2 draws closer still as Fuchida takes in Pearl Harbor's details. Yes, it appears the Americans have their ships all lined up, sandwiched between the southeast side of the U.S. Naval Air Station on Ford Island and the shore of the harbor's southern lock is nothing less than 7 of the U.S. Pacific Fleet's mightiest battleships, all lying at anchor in a neat little row. This Battleship Row, as it's called, is great for protecting these precious vessels from the Americans' greatest fear, sabotage, but also makes them sitting ducks for an aerial attack. But shouldn't there be another battleship or two? Aircraft carriers? Doesn't matter. Perhaps they're among the many other vessels in the harbor's waters. This is still almost exactly what Fuchida expected to find. At 7:49 a.m., he instructs his radio man to transmit the attack signal to all the high-level bombers, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters following their monoplane.
Tow! 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 Tow!
Each and every plane, which, including Fuchida's, comes to 183 aircraft in total, moves into attack formation. Fuchida's B-5N2 is now over the southwest corner of Oahu, near Barber's Point. The Americans are truly clueless. Everything is as predicted. This means the attack is on, and at 7:53 a.m., with Pearl Harbor in clear view below, Fuchida signals that they have the element of surprise to his 183 aircraft armada and the whole Japanese fleet as he broadcasts the code word,
Tora! Tora! Tora!
Welcome to History That Doesn't Suck. I'm your professor, Greg Jackson, and I'd like to tell you a story. It's been a long time coming, but today, we've arrived. Today's story is that of December 7th, 1941. Japan's infamous attack on Pearl Harbor. We'll begin with some very brief background. Not much, since episodes 189 and 193 detailed that background, but nonetheless, I'll set the stage. Then, it's on. We'll experience the first wave of 183 Japanese aircraft from the perspective of a few sailors in the thick of it all on Battleship Row. We'll next head to the White House and hear the news of the attack right along with FDR. Side note, if you want more on the conspiracy theories suggesting that FDR knew in advance, revisit episode 189, but I'll otherwise remind you that the United States code breaking had not revealed the Japanese plan. In other words, Franklin didn't know. Then, we're back to Oahu for the second wave of 171 Japanese aircraft, this time from the perspective of an American pilot from Wheeler Field. And as the battle ends, we'll see brave medical professionals like First Lieutenant Annie G. Fox attend to the wounded. We'll then follow one more Japanese attack made immediately after Pearl Harbor in the Philippines before heading back to Washington, D.C. for a famous speech about infamy that ends with a call for a declaration of war. A final note before we jump in. This is a sorrowful moment, a day that every American alive will remember forever. It will wake a sleeping giant from an isolationist slumber, even if there is no evidence Yamamoto Isoroku ever said anything about a sleeping giant. It will indeed spark extreme patriotism and, regretfully, extreme prejudice that will eventually lead to the internment of over 100,000 Japanese Americans. While we won't go past December 8th, 1941 in this episode, keep in mind toward that aftermath. We'll reference it in future episodes. And with that, let's back up the calendar for a little refresher. Then, experience Pearl Harbor. Rewind. As we learned in episodes 189 and 193, Japan's empire building at China's expense is souring its relationship with the United States throughout the 1930s. Things escalate in July 1939 when the U.S. announces it is revoking Japan's favored nation trading status, effective as of January 1940. Japan, far from backing down, doubles down. In September 1940, it signs the Tripartite Pact, formally allying itself with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, while also moving troops into northern French Indochina. Uncle Sam responds by cutting off exports of aviation fuel and metal to Japan. Indeed, the slow burn of the 1930s is reaching a flashpoint. Even as tensions rise, Commander-in-Chief of the combined Japanese fleet, Yamamoto Isoroku, remains deeply opposed to attacking the United States. Having spent a few years in the U.S. himself, he considers Americans, quote, adventuresome but scientifically based, close quote, traits that, combined with their industry and endless oil reserves, would ensure a Japanese defeat. But that Tripartite Pact, Yamamoto considers it the kiss of death. To him, this Axis alliance means war with the U.S. is inevitable. So, despite thinking such a war is a terrible idea, so terrible that the apocryphal waking a sleeping giant quote will later become a part of his lore, he begins ideating on how to fight it and somehow beat the odds. It may have been an older idea, it might have been inspired by war games, or even by a novel. But one way or the other, Yamamoto starts thinking that, in the event of war with America, Japan should strike hard at Pearl Harbor, thereby crippling the American Pacific Fleet and giving the land of the rising sun an advantage. Or at least a chance. Now, the logistics of secretly moving a long-range fleet, not just the aircraft carriers, battleships, and subs, but thinking through mid-ocean refueling and coordinated movements, are dizzying. Nonetheless, a staff report in April 1941 convinces Yamamoto that, if war with the U.S. happens, an attack on the Hawaiian base is feasible. That if starts looking more like a when that same summer. After Japan pushes into southern French Indochina in July 1941, the U.S. and allies respond by freezing Japanese assets and cutting the island empire's access to necessary goods like rubber, steel, and oil, which effectively cuts Japan's oil access by 90%. Well bent on empire, Japan doesn't feel chastened into changing. It feels cornered into a fight. In August, the aircraft carrier Akagi, yes, the very same which we encountered in this episode's opening, heads to Kagoshima Harbor to train for an undisclosed mission. If you take a look at a map, the terrain is eerily similar to a certain harbor in Oahu, Hawaii. Newly minted flight commander Fuchida Mitsuo leads trainings. Nonetheless, doubts persist for many in September, when war games indicate that, even if successful, an attack on Pearl Harbor will likely cost Japan 2 aircraft carriers. By October, final decisions are being made. Yamamoto says to his commanders assembled for yet another exercise aboard the Nagato, quote, "Some of you may have objections, but so long as I'm commander-in-chief, I'm intent on going through with the raid on Hawaii. And if we're going through with it, I'll do my utmost to see that the units carrying it out have all the carrier forces they ask for at their disposal." Close quote. More top-secret meetings follow, and Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi, who would personally lead the fleet attacking Pearl Harbor if it happens, remains unconvinced. But Yamamoto is insistent. If war with the U.S. must come, and it must, this attack too must happen. Finally, Nagumo gets on board. With hours and weeks of practice in bombing raids and refueling at sea, and the secret still kept, Japanese leaders feel ready to attack. On November 5th, 1941, Chief of the Naval General Staff issues Imperial Headquarters Navy Section Order No. 1 in the name of the Emperor, announcing the need to prepare for war. Quote, "In the interest of self-defense and survival, the Empire is due to open hostilities with the United States, Britain, and Holland in the first 10 days of December." Close quote. Yamamoto's response and detailed plan, Combined Fleet Top Secret Operation Order No. 1, is stealthily shared with senior military personnel. In addition to many other war aims, it directly states that, quote, "In the East, the American fleet will be destroyed," close quote, and mentions specific plans, to quote it again, for the Pearl Harbor attack. On November 7th, Yamamoto issues Combined Fleet Top Secret Operation Order No. 2, solidifying Y Day as December 8th, 1941. Japanese time, that is. That'll be December 7th in the United States. Interestingly, one note mentions that December 10th might be the ideal date for a dawn-breaking attack, since there will be no moonlight. But it's pretty well known that the U.S. fleet sails into harbor on Friday and back out again on Monday or Tuesday. Thus, a Sunday attack would cause the most damage. Well then, Sunday, December 7th it is. The plan is revealed to Navy officers on November 17th. About a week later, at 9 a.m., November 26th, a Japanese carrier strike force, under the command of Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi, his massive Kido Butai, sets sail from Hitokapu Bay in the Kuril Islands, bound for Hawaii. On December 2nd, the crews, thus far kept in the dark, are brought into the light, so to speak. As we mentioned in episode 193, Yamamoto sends the coded message, "Climb Mount Niitaka, 1208. As the Kido Butai glides nearer and nearer toward Hawaii, overall anticipation increases among the crews. Everyone is under strict orders for radio silence. That's the only way this thing will work. 2 days later, December 4th, they're in holding position. 42 degrees north, 170 degrees east. The 6 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, 9 destroyers, 7 tankers, and 3 submarines all lie in wait. Combat ships fill up their fuel tanks. Supply ships head back to Japan. An eerie calm settles before the storm. On the night of December 6th to 7th, Hawaii time, the Japanese fleet speeds toward Pearl Harbor. And the next morning, at 6 a.m., this vast array of vessels is 200 to 220 miles north of Oahu. And we know what happens next. Flight Commander Fuchida and his armada of 183 aircraft begin their flight. Radar technicians Joseph Lockhart and George Elliott noticed something is coming toward Oahu. Lieutenant Kermit A. Tyler assumes it's B-17s from California. And thus, Fuchida and his armada make their way all the way to Pearl Harbor without ever losing the element of surprise. It's 7:55 on a sleepy Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. Across the island of Oahu, civilians and sailors alike are just starting their day. And in Pearl Harbor, that means raising the colors. Aboard the 7 mighty vessels forming Battleship Row, as well as the 8 cruisers, 29 destroyers, and so many other U.S. Navy ships moored or at anchor in this great and calm natural lagoon's waters, military bands are assembling, if not already assembled, to play the national anthem as their fellow sailors hoist the U.S. flag up the halyard. And it's as this sacred daily military ritual is on the cusp of sending the stars and stripes to the top of so many flagstaffs to flutter in the Hawaiian breeze that it begins. Swooping down to a mere 20 feet above the water, Japanese bombers, those B-5N2s, move straight for Battleship Row as they drop torpedoes. These aircraft shouldn't be able to carry out such an attack in Pearl Harbor's shallow depths, but Japanese engineers have accounted for this by adding stabilizing fins to the torpedoes that enable them to defy all expectations as they smash into and around the pride of the American Pacific Fleet. As alarms sound, sailors accustomed to live ammunition drills fail to grasp what's going on. More than that, it's Sunday. Many are still in their bunks and respond by simply pulling their pillows over their ears. But things get real as the damage starts to sink in, which takes a mere minute aboard the battleship USS Oklahoma. Assailed with torpedoes at 7:56 a.m., its electricity is gone in an instant. Bosun Adolf Bothny will never forget hearing the call go out on the ship's PA system.
Man your battle stations. This is no shit.
He springs into action, doing his part even as the Oklahoma begins to list right under his feet. 2 vessels up Battleship Row. Aboard USS West Virginia, Mess Attendant Second Class Doris Miller, or Dory to his friends, drops the laundry he was collecting. Yeah, not so important when torpedoes are crashing down, and with the captain already mortally wounded, an officer orders Dory, a well-built former fullback football player from Texas, to help move him. Dashing up to the bridge, Dory helps move the dying captain. But then, he springs into action in an unexpected way. Though never trained nor permitted to fire the ship's guns, because black men like himself are not allowed to fill such roles, Dory doesn't wait for an invitation when he sees an unmanned 50 cal Browning anti-aircraft machine gun. Instead, he reassigns himself without worrying about the color line, figuring out the weapon as he goes. Just how many aircraft the brave, gallant, and untrained black Texan hit will grow in subsequent tellings. But to his own recollection, he'll hit one. And Dory won't stop until the order goes out to abandon ship. Near the top of Battleship Row, just off the northeast corner of Ford Island, 19-year-old Seaman First Class, Donald Stratton, has just dashed across the Pennsylvania-class battleship, USS Arizona, to reach his battle station, an anti-aircraft director. Settling into this metal box-like compartment from which he and a small crew control the ship's port-side anti-aircraft guns, he watches as a Japanese bomber zooms low, unleashing strafing fire across the Arizona's deck. Sailors fall dead or wounded, the deck splinters, and as the plane zooms by, Donald will later painfully recall how I could see the pilot in his leather helmet and goggles taunting me with a smirk and a wave as he passed, like a grinning devil. Despite one man being shot in the leg, Donald's crew nonetheless soon joins him. But as they direct, their guns aren't hitting anything, so the team makes adjustments. But still, their anti-aircraft shells are exploding too soon in the sky. Honestly, they don't know what to do. The Japanese torpedo bombers are flying too low for them to dare to target for fear of hitting their own ships, while the dive bombers are too high to reach. Meanwhile, bombs, strafing fire, and billows of black smoke fill the harbor. This is a nightmare, and it's about to get far worse. initially striking the deck near turret number 2. A massive, armor-piercing bomb slices through several steel decks of the Arizona to reach the black powder-filled forward magazine. A fireball roars 1,000 feet into the sky, as do debris and shrapnel, including chunks of steel and chunks of flesh. A 15-year-old sailor, only here because of forged papers, Martin Matthews, clings to a buoy after being blown off the Arizona by the explosion and watches as all of this rains down. I do remember many parts of what you might call shrapnel or pieces of steel from the ship and even dismembered bodies. I saw a thigh and leg. I saw fingers. I saw hands. I saw elbows and arms. It's far too much for a young boy of 15 years old to have seen. As of 8:06 a.m., the Arizona, that great, powerful battleship, is going down. As it does, it's taking 1,177 American sailors and Marines to their watery graves, most in a very literal sense. Some 900 of them will forever remain entombed here, in Pearl Harbor's waters and inside the last ship on which they ever served. Among the crew are 38 sets of brothers. Yes, some American families will soon learn they lost more than one son today. One family is losing 2 generations. Machinist's mate, Thomas Augusta Free, and his son, Seaman Second Class William Thomas Free, both serve on the Arizona. Though now divorced from Thomas, I can only imagine how Myrtle will respond when she gets the news about him and their son. She is but one example of the tears and pain that the sinking of the Arizona alone causes families across the nation. Indeed, these 1,177 souls account for nearly half of those who will die today. And that death count is racking up fast. Even as our friend, Seaman First Class Donald Stratton, and his anti-aircraft crew miraculously escape the Arizona in the minutes before she sinks, most pushing through the searing pain of burned flesh as they climb a knotted rope over the oil and flame-covered waters to the nearby repair ship USS Vestal. Other ships are going down. At 8:08, the Oklahoma capsizes. Its 429 deaths is the second greatest loss of life today. Meanwhile, the Pacific Fleet's flagship USS California is slowly flooding. The West Virginia is in flames, and within the next few minutes, the Arizona finishes sinking, while on the other side of Ford Island, away from Battleship Row, the target ship USS Utah is capsized. All of this by 8:12 a.m., not even 20 minutes since the Japanese first attacked. By the time this first wave ends, near 9 o'clock, U.S. aircraft on Oahu air stations are largely destroyed as well. As for the Japanese, they fly off having lost only 9 aircraft. In the final minutes of the first wave, at 8:40 a.m., announcer Webb Lee Edwards cuts into KGMB's regular programming. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you important news. Please pay attention. The island is under attack. I repeat, the island is under attack by hostile forces. But even now, with well over 1,000 dead in the inferno-like hellscape that is Pearl Harbor, some listeners think it's a hoax. Recalling Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast a few years back, they still won't believe the attack is real, even when they hear it on the radio.
That's the sound of extremely processed dog food, which is the norm at most pet food companies. But at the Farmer's Dog, we do things differently. We gently cook our food without ultra-processing. It's developed by our team of board-certified nutritionists, made to human-grade safety standards and portioned for your dog, then delivered right to your door. How does that sound to you? Get 50% off your first box, available only at thefarmersdog.com.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Deborah had to have surgery.
I had hip surgery in November of 2024.
Her United Healthcare nurse, Crystal, checked on her.
We do a routine call after surgery, and I could tell that she was struggling.
Deborah needed help.
My infection markers were through the roof.
And Crystal knew what to do.
I called the hospital and said she's coming in.
And got Deborah the help she needed.
Crystal and United Healthcare saved my life.
Hear more stories like Deborah's at uhc.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan area. Limitation and exclusions apply.
It's 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time, December 7th, 1941. We're in Washington, D.C., in the Oval Office, where President Franklin Delano Roosevelt is just finishing lunch with his close friend and confidant, Harry Hopkins. Bad health took this former Secretary of Commerce out of Franklin's cabinet years ago, but Harry is still among the president's closest advisors. And boy, does Franklin need advice now. Between the war in Europe, isolationists at home, and saber-rattling from Japan, Franklin is probably dreaming of the simpler days when bank closures were his biggest problems. And although Washington spent last night puzzling over a series of urgent Japanese diplomatic messages decrypted by American codebreakers, nothing in them hinted at what is coming now. Their lunch is suddenly interrupted by a phone call. It's Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox. Franklin must think he's misheard. Did the Navy Secretary really just say that Hawaii has been attacked? That Japanese planes are bombing the U.S. Naval Base and Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor? It's only just past dawn there. No, surely this can't be. But in fact, it's true, and making sure that's clear, Frank Knox all but yells into the president's ear, "This is no drill!" Also in shock, Harry turns to the president. There must be some mistake. Surely Japan would not attack Honolulu. But the shock fades fast. Franklin grasps the grim logic immediately. An unexpected strike on one of America's strongest Pacific outposts. Of course that's what Japan would do if it ever came to war. Equally clear is that the national conversation about isolationism is now over. As Harry so succinctly puts it, the Japanese have, quote, made the decision for him, close quote. The White House scrambles into action. Franklin calls Secretary of State Cordell Hull and tells him to receive the Japanese ambassador and special envoy today as planned, but mention nothing about the attack, then send them on their way. Well, Cordell does his best to follow the president's orders. Nonetheless, Harry Hopkins will later mention hearing that Cordell uses some, quote, pretty strong Tennessee mountain language, close quote, in the meeting. It's now 3 p.m. in D.C., 9 a.m. at Pearl Harbor. Franklin and his war cabinet are deep in conference. The mood is somber and grim. Cordell Hull, Frank Knox, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Harold Stark, U.S. Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall, and the President weigh what has happened and how they should respond. They rush to protect other potential targets across the Pacific and send orders to secure the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. Even amid the shock, each man pledges that the coming war, no matter how difficult, will prove an American victory. The meeting is then interrupted. The War Cabinet steps out, while Franklin answers a call from across the Atlantic. It's his bromance buddy, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, calling from London.
Mr. President, what's this about Japan?
It's quite true. They have attacked us at Pearl Harbor. We are in the same boat now. In the same boat, perhaps not the best metaphor for the moment, but no matter. The two men speak plainly about next steps. Franklin tells Winston that he'll be asking Congress to declare war on Japan tomorrow. The British bulldog assures his friend that Britain will do the same. The need for subtlety between the two men is gone. The age of American isolationism has ended in one morning. And Britain, after 2 long years of pleading for U.S. support, finally has the ally it so desperately needs, even if it means adding another enemy to its own list. And with these plans made, the call ends.
This certainly simplifies things. God be with you.
God be with you is right, especially since the Japanese attack is nowhere near finished. Launched not long after their compatriots, a second wave of 171 aircraft is already in the air and bearing down on Pearl Harbor's burning battleships, Oahu's airfields, and anything else that falls inside their bomb sites. Fires are raging, oil is coating the water, and the harbor is already choked with black smoke when this new wave descends. Civilians, too, are losing homes and lives. That's right, not all casualties are military. Residents across Honolulu and the surrounding communities are stunned to find themselves caught in the middle of a war they never imagined would reach them. The youngest victim of the day is 3-month-old Janet Yumiko Ota, killed alongside her mother and grandmother when a U.S. anti-aircraft shell falls on their home. And that tragedy is far from unique. Civilian businesses and apartments take hits. Some Japanese pilots strafe infrastructure near military targets, including sugar mills at Waipahu and Eva, though whether they truly aimed for these sites or struck them incidentally will never be known. Even up in the air, Hawaiians get caught in the crossfire. Right before the first bombs fell, Japanese fighters fired on several small private planes simply because they were airborne. Perhaps the best-known case is that of Roy Vitusik and his son Martin, who were caught in the morning air raid, yet somehow managed to bring down their bullet-scarred Aeronca at John Rogers Airport in the middle of the chaos. But a sad truth is that many of the 49 civilians killed and 35 wounded on Oahu the morning of December 7th are the victims of friendly fire. Quite a few American anti-aircraft rounds fired amid the desperation to stave off this attack failed to detonate in the sky or otherwise miss their targets, striking neighborhoods and businesses, which burn as overstretched fire crews focus on saving military infrastructure. Even so, a few brave U.S. pilots, running through smoke, debris, and strafing fire, managed to scramble into their cockpits, though not always their flight suits, before Japanese bombs can destroy their planes. It's sometime in the morning, probably near 9 o'clock. Lieutenant Phil Rasmussen is in the air above Oahu, flying an old Curtiss P-36. And what a crazy morning he's having. At 8 a.m., he was waiting to use the bathroom on his assigned base toward the middle of the island, Wheeler Field, when Japanese planes started dropping bombs on hangars and otherwise lighting up and destroying U.S. aircraft. That's when he and 3 of his fellow flyboys, Lou Sanders, Gordon Sterling, and John Thacker, jumped into action. In what seems a miracle, the Japanese let up, and these gents got airborne. And that's how Phil ended up where he is now, flying in a 4-man formation in an old monoplane whose weaponry consists of the old-school fire-through-the-spinning propeller machine guns, while wearing nothing but his pajamas, boots, and belt holstering a .45 caliber pistol. Yeah, that's been his morning, and as he and the boys head toward Bellows Field, which is yet another base under attack, Phil comes to a terrible realization while checking his guns to make sure he can handle that fight. I'll let him tell you about it. We headed toward the Ko'olau mountain range, up here to the right. We charged our guns, meaning you're in the cockpit. You pull a charging handle back as far as your ear, and then let it slide forward, and it puts a bullet in the chamber. The .30 caliber was on my right side, so I pulled it back, charged it, and I pulled the trigger to make sure I could fire the gun. Nothing happened. I pulled it back and put another bullet in the chamber. Pulled the trigger, nothing happened, and I had a dead gun. I couldn't fire it, couldn't use it. The .50 caliber, I pulled it back the same way and let it slide in, and it started to fire by itself. In other words, I had a runaway gun. I didn't have to pull the trigger. It would just start firing. So I had to stop this waste of ammunition and firing. So I had to keep it cocked back there, and I was really loaded for bear. Yeah, not ideal. Climbing up toward the mountains, the 4-man squadron receives new instructions via their radios. Instead of Bellows Field, they're to head to Kaneohe Bay. But as they cruise at 9,000 feet, they encounter Japanese fighters, Mitsubishi A6Ms, known as Zeros. This leaves our helmetless, pajama-clad pilot to make do with his one runaway gun. To quote Phil again, "This was the worst thing that could happen to us in the airplanes we were flying. We just exploded into dogfighting. One Zero came perpendicular to me, and as I led him several plane lengths, I let that 50 caliber slide back in again, and it started firing by itself, and I saw a couple of puffs in his fuselage. I saw him smoking. Then, at that time, another Zero came, head on to me, and almost rammed me. I pulled up violently to the right to avoid being rammed by him, and as I pulled up, another Zero got me in his sights, and he blew out my canopy, shot up my tail, severed my hydraulic lines, and severed my rudder cables. I was pretty much out of control, and I tumbled down out of control trying to regain control of the airplane until finally, about 5,000 or 6,000 feet, I got control of it. The cloud layer wasn't that level also, so I was popping in and out of the clouds trying to maintain control of this airplane. Having survived this second wave encounter, Phil is now heading home, back to Wheeler Field. But he still faces another obstacle. Since his hydraulic line was shot, the landing gear won't go down. Luckily, the unharmed pilot is able to manually lock the gear into place, just as the P-36 touches down on the morning dewy grass landing strip. The plane spins a few times before finally skidding to a stop. But all is not well on the ground here at Wheeler Field. As Phil tells us, the hangars were still on fire. The ammunition and tracers were shooting out of the hangars over our heads. Bullets stored in the hangar that ignited from the flames. The P-40s were all lined up, their backs broken, their noses pointing toward the sky. As I looked down towards Pearl Harbor, I saw this huge cloud of smoke covering the whole horizon, and amid this huge black smoke were these huge orange blossoms exploding. And so, it's back to work. Well, after a quick stop at the barracks to change out of his soaking wet pajamas, that is. Now in a proper flight suit, Phil's back to save whatever planes can be salvaged and flown once more. Lieutenant Phil Rasmussen's tale is but one of thousands from today's attack, and a poignant reminder that the Japanese hit far more than Pearl Harbor. Indeed, between Wheeler, Hickam, and Bellows airfields, Eva Marine Corps Air Station, Kaneohe Naval Air Station, as well as Schofield Barracks, hundreds of dead military personnel and destroyed aircraft can be found at military sites across Oahu, not to mention the civilians caught in the middle of the fray we discussed earlier. Nonetheless, there's no comparison to the carnage and destruction in the harbor. By the time this second wave of the Japanese attack ends, around 9:45, Battleship Row is truly broken. Like the Arizona and the Oklahoma, the West Virginia has sunk, and the California is slowly on its way down. The Nevada alone managed to get underway, and was saved, in a manner of speaking, by brilliant officers who kept the ship from blocking the harbor's channel or sinking by running her aground at Hospital Point. Even the dry-docked Pennsylvania over in the U.S. Navy Yard got hit. As for the Japanese, they lost another 20 aircraft in this wave, bringing their total loss of planes for the day to 29. As the sound of Japanese aircraft, bombs, and machine guns fade into the screams of more than 1,000 wounded, American military personnel are left to wonder, will the Japanese come back yet again? Will there be a third wave? It's a good question, one that Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi will soon answer.
Come to DSW for the shoes, stay for the fun. Because, let's be honest, if shoe shopping isn't fun, are you even doing it right? So go ahead, try something new. Try something different. Good different. Try something that feels like you. You know, the real you. And then definitely brag about it later. Because at DSW, you've got unlimited freedom to play. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or at DSW.com. Let us surprise you.
This episode is brought to you by 20th Century Studios' upcoming comedy, Ella McKay. From Academy Award-winning writer-director James L. Brooks, Emma Mackey plays Ella McKay, an idealistic young woman who juggles family and work, in a story about the people you love and how to survive them. Featuring an all-star cast, including Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Loudon, Kumail Nanjiani, Iowa Debris, Julie Kavner, with Albert Brooks and Woody Harrelson. Ella McKay, in theaters December 12th. Get tickets now.
Ford was built on the belief that the world doesn't get to decide what you're capable of. You do. So ask yourself, can you or can't you? Can you load up a Ford F-150 and build your dream with sweat and steel? Can you chase thrills and conquer curves in a Mustang? Can you take a Bronco to where the map ends and adventure begins? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Ready, set, Ford.
By mid-morning on December 7th, 1941, the American military on Oahu might be bloodied, but its service members are on guard. They are prepared for a third wave. It's the right call. After 2 hammer blows in less than 2 hours, commanders across the island don't doubt that the Japanese will come back again. But with Japan's commander-in-chief of the combined fleet, Yamamoto Isoroku, nearly 4,000 miles away on his flagship in Japanese waters, the decision to make a third run or not lies with the commander of the First Fleet, or the Kido Butai, Admiral Nagumo Chuichi. And he decides it's a no. Professional and amateur historians alike will long debate the choice. Some will say he could have truly finished off America's Pacific Fleet. Others will point to the Vice Admiral's own limited resources and limiting logistics. But whether he's making a foolishly conservative decision or intelligently recognizing that his forces have played a big hand and beaten the house, so now is the time to cash out rather than push their luck, is all speculation. Ultimately, we don't know exactly why he chooses to pass on the third wave attack, nor what its outcome might have been. Meanwhile, Pearl Harbor deals with the aftermath as the day wears on. Thick, black plumes of smoke rise from the harbor's burning ships, and even the water itself, as oil leaking from bomb-damaged holes feed dancing patches of fire on the surface. Torn metal, splintered wood, and broken parts of aircraft are everywhere. And through all of this, firefighters and sailors attempt to fight the flames, while salvage teams, Navy Yard workers, and divers waste no time trying to save damaged and even sunken ships. Oahu's airfields aren't much better. At Hickam and Wheeler Fields, hangars are shattered, and, as we heard from Phil Rasmussen, many of the aircraft are destroyed or in the process of burning past the point of saving. Wounded personnel lie on the ground, writhing in pain as they impatiently wait for the overwhelmed medics, already doing all they possibly can. First Lieutenant Annie G. Fox is the head nurse at Hickam Fields Station Hospital. Annie only has a team of 6 nurses and 30 beds, but neither those limitations nor the low-flying Japanese aircraft have stopped the 47-year-old medical professional and her nurses from leaping into action amid the attack. And make no mistake, being in a hospital during the attack does not mean you're safe from enemy bombs. Indeed, one Japanese bomb fell right across the street from Annie's small hospital, while another exploded only 20 feet away from the building, leaving a massive 30-foot crater in its wake. But the attack's end doesn't bring any reprieve to Annie. Assisting doctors in surgery and coordinating triage plans for everything from shrapnel wounds to severe burns and shock, the head nurse and her team barely have time to give out pain medicine before they shepherd soldiers to the nearby, larger, and therefore better equipped, Tripler Hospital. More help comes, however, as the wives of officers and NCOs, as well as ordinary civilians, hurry to the aid of suffering soldiers. Annie will receive the Purple Heart for her actions today. However, when the criteria for the Purple Heart gets changed in 1942, she'll be reassigned to a Bronze Star. And of course, Annie isn't the only nurse who goes above and beyond during the Japanese attack. Of the 82 Army nurses stationed across 3 facilities in Hawaii, 4 more receive official commendations for their, quote, fidelity and essential service, close quote. And I'd imagine the others deserve serious recognition too. But as the day wears on, the mood across the island is tense and fearful. Civilians and service members alike feel a deep shock. Pearl Harbor, which just hours ago stood as a symbol of American naval strength, now lies broken and smoldering. And the casualties are catastrophic. Across Oahu, U.S. losses total 4 sunken battleships, with 4 severely damaged, a dozen or so vessels pretty solidly wrecked, including the sunken former battleship turned target ship, Utah, some 300 mangled or destroyed aircraft, 2,335 military deaths, and 68 civilian deaths, coming to a total of 2,403 dead, as well as nearly 1,200 injured. Thank goodness aircraft carriers USS Lexington and Enterprise are currently out on missions in the Pacific, and USS Saratoga is on the West Coast, where she's just finishing an overhaul. The survival of these 3 aircraft carriers will mean everything as the Pacific Fleet tries to bounce back. By evening, Oahu will be under a curfew as a precaution against the possibility of yet another attack. But again, another attack is not coming. Well, not to Pearl Harbor, that is. Even as the world learns of the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan has more strikes planned across the Pacific. Bombers and fighters lift off from newly constructed airfields in its conquered territories of the Marshall Islands, Indochina, and Formosa, or Taiwan as you and I will later know it. From the Marshall Islands, the Japanese are headed to one of the most remote outposts in the world, a full 2,000 miles from Tokyo in the middle of the Pacific's shark-infested cobalt blue waters, a small treeless way station known as Wake Island. From Indochina, they're headed to British-held outposts in Malaya, Burma, and Hong Kong. And from Formosa, the target is the American Commonwealth Territory of the Philippines, where the commander of the U.S. Army's Far East Command, General Douglas MacArthur, has his headquarters. Yes, we know this Great War hero of the Rainbow Division well from many past episodes, and even as Hawaii still smolders, he too has to contend with a Japanese attack that doesn't go well for the Americans. It's 4 a.m, December 8th, 1941, Luzon Island, Philippines time. Because of the international dateline, it's currently 10 a.m. in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, meaning the second wave and attack there has only just concluded. And that's precisely why the dark but thinning-haired aviation commander for the Philippines, Major General Louis Brereton, finds himself waking up to the phone ringing at this early hour. He has Lieutenant Colonel Charles Caldwell answer. He then asks the officer, "What is it, Charlie?" "General, Pearl Harbor's been bombed." Grabbing the phone, Louis hears the voice of General Richard Sutherland, who tells the barely awake aviation commander that they're now in a state of war. As General Louis Brereton snaps into action, he's processing what is both surprising and not surprising news. Things in the Philippines have been tense. Just yesterday, rumor had it that the Japanese sent a message to Washington that negotiations were over. But an attack? And in Hawaii instead of here in the Philippines. The thin-haired general gets down to business quickly, ordering that all air units be notified of the attack and immediately prepare for action. He then leaves his headquarters at Nielsen Field to report to his superior, General Douglas MacArthur. It's now about 5 a.m. Hastily dressed Louis arrives breathless at Douglas MacArthur's headquarters at Fort Santiago, Manila. Doug is well aware of the situation. He got his own wake-up call at around 3 a.m. General Richard Sutherland, the same who rang Louis at 4 a.m., informs him that Doug's in a meeting. Not willing to waste any time, the aviation commander requests permission for an immediate attack on the island of Japanese-held Formosa, again, later to be known as Taiwan. Of course, the final go-ahead has to come from the top, from Doug himself, but Louis is instructed to get his planes ready for combat. Back at Nielsen Field, Louis's men are frustrated that they can't strike as they wait for final approval. But the pilots and crew prepare the planes as ordered. B-17s and P-40s at nearby Clark Field are now in position. Nerves are heightened, especially as rumors swirl of Japanese planes coming right for their airfield. Pilots are anxious to be wheels up. It's been over an hour. What's taking Doug so long to give the order? Finally, at 11 a.m., General Richard Sutherland calls. Louis's bombing mission is a go. But it's too late. With planes on the ground, lined up like sitting ducks waiting for pilots and fueling, the Japanese arrive at 12:13 p.m. Their strafing machine gun fire sends men running as exploding bombs blow Clark Field to Kingdom Come. Zeros fly in at roof height, in tight 3-plane formations, finishing off any targets that aren't on fire. These attacks destroy a full half of the Philippines' flying defenses and completely destroy hopes for counterstrikes. There's no easy way of putting this. It's a disaster. No one is quite sure what led to this failure in the Philippines. what kept Doug from responding for so long? Was this a communications line issue, with General Richard Sutherland keeping vital information from the boss? He does have a reputation for overstepping in this regard, with some generals and admirals complaining that it's virtually impossible to see Doug without Richard's say-so. Even if this is the case, Doug was well aware of Pearl Harbor, so why did it take him so long to give the go-ahead? Later information will suggest that he may have waited, believing that the Philippines' neutral status as a U.S. Commonwealth offered some protection from a Japanese attack, or that he thought he had to wait for an actual attack before he could respond, or even that Doug's close friend, Philippine President Manuel Quezon, told him to hold off. Doug himself says he was never informed of a plan to attack Formosa, and that because the Navy was so damaged at Pearl, the Philippine Air Arm lacked supplies and munitions. To quote him, "Our sky defense died with our battleships." Whatever the reason, the effect is the same. The American forces are in ruins, along with those other areas across the Pacific that the Japanese attacked. On the other side of the dateline, back in Washington, where it's now about midnight as December 7th fades into December 8th, President Franklin Roosevelt is incredibly frustrated. As he discusses the just-ended attack in the Philippines with famed radio reporter Edward R. Murrow, the president slams his fist on the table, yelling, "They caught our planes on the ground! On the ground!" But that could probably go for Pearl Harbor, too. Franklin needs to speak to Congress, not to mention the nation, as soon as possible. Hours earlier, just before 5 p.m. of December 7th, he summoned his secretary, Grace Tully. With Eleanor just down the hall busily reworking what she would say this very same evening on her weekly radio broadcast, Grace typed, as Franklin dictated, the first draft of what will soon become yet another of his famous speeches. One that, frankly, will go down as one of the greatest orations of the 20th century. Quite intentionally, he opts for brevity rather than a long-winded diplomatic or policy speech. Maybe he's taking a page from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Short, to the point, and deeply moving. Whatever his inspiration, it's working, as is FDR. Come the morning of December 8th, he continues to pour himself into his speech, making handwritten revisions on Grace's typed copy. New sentences get added as more information arrives. He notes the Japanese attacks on other Pacific territories like Guam, the Philippines, Wake Island, and Midway. He spends quite a bit of time on his opening line. As well he should. The introduction of any written work is arguably the most important. It's the hook. He's trying a few things out. A date which will live in world history. No, not quite right. Simultaneously attacked becomes suddenly and deliberately attacked. In one version, without warning is tossed in. Later, it's stricken out. By late morning, Franklin is still painstakingly reviewing and refining his reading copy, making even more handwritten alterations. He practices it, knowing that this message, brief, direct, and forceful, must galvanize a shocked, mourning, and soon-to-be catapulted into war nation and the wider world. Then finally, he's ready, and just in time. It's 12:29 p.m. We're in Washington, D.C., at the U.S. Capitol building, where President Franklin D. Roosevelt is just setting foot in the House chamber. He leans on his oldest son, Marine Captain James Roosevelt, as he swings one pained, brace-held leg after the other. This isn't the first time many here have watched with admiration as Franklin, unwilling to allow the presidency to be defined by his own physical incapacities, has insisted on defying nature's cruel inflictions on his mortal flesh by walking. But God, his labored, unyielding steps take a special meaning today. As America reels over such an unexpected crippling at Pearl Harbor, there's something oddly comforting in this reminder that the man at the nation's helm right now is no stranger to feeling cut down unexpectedly. And more than that, he isn't one to accept such defeat. As FDR reaches the speaker's platform, the crowded room cheers and applauds. He takes in the packed gallery, his cabinet, 9 Supreme Court justices, 82 senators, 389 representatives, with the few absent members of Congress rushing back to Washington after hearing yesterday's news. He sees his wife, Eleanor, sitting beside his professorial predecessor's widow, Edith Wilson. This will be the second time that Edith has heard a president call for war from this podium, and it's not lost on the current First Lady how she reflects Edith of 25 years ago in this moment. As Eleanor will later write, she feels a curious sense of repetition in Edith's presence. Finally, Speaker of the House Sam Rayburn declares,
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Again, the chamber erupts. And once they quiet down, Franklin, after making the usual acknowledgement of federal dignitaries, opens his speech with what will become one of the most famous sentences ever uttered by an American.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
FDR continues on, reminding his listeners that America and Japan had been
in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific.
He informs them that the Japanese ambassador only addressed the Secretary of State after, not before, the attack began, and even then did not offer a formal declaration of war. This was indeed a deliberate surprise attack then, or, as Franklin puts it,
the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States.
And with Japan's secretive hostilities explained, FDR broadly explains the extent of its offensive, which includes Pearl Harbor, yes, but far more.
The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island.
And so, given this surprise offensive, this premeditated invasion, FDR, knowing that this places all of America's isolationist inclinations underfoot, asks Congress to defend the American people, to declare war.
Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
History That Doesn't Suck is created and hosted by me, Greg Jackson. Episode researched and written by Greg Jackson, Riley Neubauer, and Will King. Production by Airship. Audio editing by Mohammed Shahzaid. Sound design by Molly Bach. Theme music composed by Greg Jackson. Arrangement and additional composition by Lindsey Graham of Airship. For bibliography of all primary and secondary sources consulted in writing this episode, visit htdspodcast.com. HTDS is supported by fans at htdspodcast.com/membership. My gratitude to you kind souls providing funding to help us keep going. Thank you. And a special thanks to our patrons whose monthly gift puts them at producer status. Ahmad Chapman, Andrew Nissen, Art Lane, Autumn Weinland, Bob Stinnett, Bonnie Brooks, Brian Goodson, Bruce Hibbert, Charles Clendenny, Charlie Mages, Christopher Merchant, Christopher Bishop, Christopher Pullman, Cindy Rosenthal, Colleen Martin, Connor Hogan, Dan G., Darren Chambers, David Niebrush, David Rifkin, Durante Spencer, Donald Moore, Eli Edwards, Elizabeth Chris Jansen, Ellen Stewart, Ernie Lowmaster, G2303, Jeffrey Nelson, George J. Sherwood, Gareth Griffin, Henry Brunges, Holly Hamilton, Jake Gilbreth, James Bledsoe, James Blue, James Schlender, Jarrett Zongora, Jeff Dempsey, Jeffrey Moots, Jennifer Ruth, Jeremy Wells, Jessica Poppet, Joe Dobis, John Boothby, John Frugal Dougal, John Huber, John Messmer, John Oliveros, John Rudlevich, John Schaefer, Jonathan Sheff, Joshua Steiner, J.P. Brooks, Justin May, Justin Spriggs, Karen Bartholomew, Carl and Elizabeth Salmon, Carl Friedman, Carl Hindle, Ken Culver, Kim R., Christian Pratt, Kyle Decker, L. Paul Goringer, Laura Norman, Lawrence Neubauer, Linda Cunningham, Mark Ellis, Marcia Smith, Matt Siegel, Micah M., Michael Sullivan, Nate Seconder, Nick Caffrell, Owen Sedla, Patrick Day, Peter Hugenroth, Rick Brown, Rob Drazovich, Sam Holtzman, Sarah Prescott, Sarah Treywick, Shannon Hoagland, Sharon Thiessen, Sean Baines, Stacy Ritter, Steve Williams, The Creepy Girl, Thomas Churchill, Thomas Matthew Edwards, Thomas Sabath, Tim and Sarah Turner, Todd Curran, Tom Dostofka, Leslie McKee, Zach Green, and Zach Jackson. Join me in 2 weeks, where I'd like to tell you a story.
We are officially heading into Thanksgiving season, which back in the day when we were growing up was a time to take pride in our American history. But nowadays, what kids are being taught is very different. That's why I love America's History by Tuttle Twins. Grab the family starter pack because it covers those pilgrims who came over here in a way that's not going to poison your children's minds and will actually make them thankful for this wonderful gift that we have been given. Pick up America's History and the whole starter pack at TuttleTwins.com.